Death Knights.
So there's lots and lots to go through anyway. And also, disclaimer, these are literally just my raw notes. So they may be nonsensical and, well, I'm sure there's nothing inappropriate, but they will be nonsensical.
Yeah.
It's like blood is not really...
Well, the first thing is we do have a little ranking system that we
Yes,
developed.
and this...
Well, you developed.
Yeah, it's not the most well thought out ranking system, I have to say that for sure. But effectively, gameplay is more or less how fun it is to sort of play. How much you can kind of... Sometimes there's a little bit of depth there where it's like, hey, this is really complex, so it's really high rated. Or this is simple, but it's fun, so it's also high rated. Which means nothing's rated all that badly, thankfully. But it is kind of... This is a subjective measure of fun. That's something I generally think. Effectiveness is basically how cool you can be outside of your main role. So, that's crowd control. That's, bringing interesting utility, stuff like Windrush. It's like, hey, you can bop, you can sack, you can Windrush, you can lay on hands. That's all paladin stuff. Windrush, you can mass polymorph and Ring of Frost for like skips, Shroud of Concealment, stuff like that. It's all like how you can feel like you contribute that isn't just numbers. And then strength is close to how strong it's likely to be going in based on design trends and current tuning, which could all go wrong. As an example, while we were talking, Guardian Druid damage got buffed by 50%.
50?
50%.
0%.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. We're getting interesting levels of balance changes in the last little bit of beta. But yeah, basically Blood DK is good. Like some small, and this is going to be the case for most classes, right? Blood DK is like, hey, you've got some new cool things. Hey, you can get Empower Rune Weapon if you want. I think it might be a little bit expensive to go over there, but they could totally just go get Empower Rune Weapon. And that's a big haste cooldown they didn't have access before. That's nuts. They've got like Death's Caress now gives them Bone Shield stacks, so they don't have to spend loads on Marrow Rend, and it's like technically more efficient per rune, which is really interesting for refreshes instead of just Marrow Rending to refresh. They've got obviously a Bomb Limb. They've got Shattering Bone, which means now whenever a Bone Shield breaks, they do some AoE damage, which is great because you have to take Mark of Blood or Tombstone to get that. And no one's ever really liked those two, but Tombstone breaks your Bone Shield, which shatters them. So you now have a little bit of a button that's a Bone Shield breaker that does a lot of damage, but also gives you your defensive cooldowns. And that's kind of a lot of the case of, this is just, here's your spec. We made some slight improvements. Please enjoy. And it's really nice. It's really nice. That's more or less it. And I think the other thing I'd say is, in terms of strength, this idea of, hey, death strikes based on damage taken. You know what was still pretty high? Damage taken compared to health.
Oh, yeah.
It's also percentage based for your minimum. So you don't get nerfed like Pala and Brewmaster was with the healing changes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep. Interesting. Of the tanks, only Brewmaster and Prop Pala took any meaningful nerf. Protware got a tiny bit, but not as much.
I've not played that since 5.4.
Yeah, it's crazy. Frost DK is kind of the same. It's just this copy paste a little bit, but it's got a couple of few changes, like the ability to apply Razor Ice with Rime procced Howling Blast, which is nice for the two-handed build, which means that's not that awful comparatively. I know it's sort of, it's kind of weird with tuning on that, especially because that talent is like 1 point way over the left-hand side of the tree. But it's generally interesting. It is just still breath versus, what are they called? Breath versus obliteration.
Same old.
But there's a few more moving parts in the middle that make it a little bit more interesting. And I've seen a couple of weird builds. Its Bicep Pump is like just going wild with pre-patch, doing crazy different builds. You're like,
Bicep Pump?
Bicep Pump, yeah, it's his name.
Pog.
Yeah, it's DK man. It's great.
Nice. And then I guess there's also Unholy Witch. I know historically it hasn't been your favorite. It honestly hasn't been my favorite either. I never really enjoyed the pace of it, though I know a lot of people love it. Yeah,
that's what I think is weird. It's like, that's where the subjectivity comes in, where I like don't particularly rate it very highly, where I'm like, it's fine. But I think I rated that because they've got a disease build now. There's a thing called Plague Bringer, which is a debuff they can have upkeep on, which increases the damage their diseases take at, so you can have more of a diseasey spready build instead of just one that's purely focused on wounds. And you're like, you've added a build. You've added a build to a spec to the talent trees.
Oh,
How'd you... Hang on a second. That's what the talent trees were for.
That's good.
And they did it. And it probably will be roughly enough competitive in most cases, unless you're substantially busted or an outlier in some capacity, like you covered in the choosing a main video in 95% Mythic versus 50% Heroic with very different stats.